I just want to thank you guys. Thank you for the conference and thank you for accepting me into this and thank you for helping me, taking me open arms when I asked you if you could help. Because I think it's very much needed that we start this group here in Iceland, because Iceland is a harsh country, long winters with no daylight and then full summers with no nighttime. So I'm just so thankful for knowing that this was something that I could take up and run with it.
That's our guest this week, Agust Kristmanns, an Icelandic electrician with 3 children, one of whom has a very rare condition called 2q37 Deletion Syndrome. Only 300 people in the world have been diagnosed with this condition. We'll hear Agust's story, including his effort to start a special fathers network in Iceland. It's a unique tale and one you'll enjoy on this Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. Say hello to David Hirsch.
Hi, and thanks for listening to the Dad to Dad podcast, Fathers Mentoring Fathers of Children with Special Needs, presented by the Special Fathers Network.
The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children connect with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for dads to support dads. To find out more, go to 21stcenturydads.org.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we'd be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad.
Now let's hear this conversation between Agust Kristmanns and David Hirsch.
I'm thrilled to be talking today with Agust Kristmanns of Reykjavik, Iceland, a father of 3 who works as an electrician and serves on the board of Unique Children of Iceland, which is Einstokborn. Agust, thank you for taking the time to do a podcast interview for the Special Fathers Network.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You and your wife, Maria, have been married for 23 years and are the proud parents of 3 children, Asta Marie, 23, Sarah Dug, 15, and middle child son, Ingi, 20, who was diagnosed with 2q37 Deletion Syndrome, a rare chromosome condition that affects his development. Let's start with some background. Where did you grow up? Tell me something about your family.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Ólafsvík. It's a very small fishing village in western Iceland. There's about 1,000 people living there. And I was raised by my grandparents from 2 months old, and they adopted me. Lived in Ólafsvík until I was 14, and all in sport like soccer and handball especially, and skiing of course, and going fishing a lot with my granddad, who had a fishing boat. And yeah, it was a happy upbringing in middle of nowhere and no concerns in the world.
Well, thanks for sharing. Did you have any siblings when you were growing up?
When I was raised up, because I was raised by my grandparents, I was raised as a only child in the household. But I have 4 half siblings that lived with my mom and with my dad, and then also I was raised more or less with my mother's siblings. They were household names in the upbringing because they lived in the same village. And when my dad remarried, his wife has 3 kids. My step siblings, and yeah, there's a lot of names to remember. But solely, I was raised all by myself with my grandparents alone.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing. I'm sort of curious to know, what did your dad do for a living?
My dad is learned goldsmith. and he has been working for Georg Jensen, the Danish goldsmith company. But for most of his time, he's been a fisherman, taxi driver, but stopped doing that 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and started to go back to the goldsmith.
Was that in Iceland or was that in Spain?
In Denmark. He moved to Denmark to work for Georg Jensen.
Oh.
And he also have been working here in Iceland in the family business of goldsmiths. And then he moved to Spain for retiring.
Okay, so he's moved to Spain in retirement. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification. I appreciate it. And I'm sort of wondering, how would you describe your relationship with your dad, even though you grew up with your grandparents? I'm wondering, how would you describe your relationship with your dad?
I more or less, I always knew my dad, and he came to visit us, or I came to the capital to visit him, maybe 2 or 3 times a year. And when I moved to Reykjavik, about 14 years old, it was at that point I started to, get to know him better and start a relationship with him. And soon as we clicked, we have more or less been like best friends and soulmates. He had drinking problem when I was growing up, and that's why I moved to my grandparents, because both mom and dad had a drinking problem at that time in their life. So he had stopped drinking before I moved to Reykjavik. So it made it easier to start a relationship with him.
Well, thanks for sharing. I appreciate it. I'm wondering, the grandparents that you grew up with, were those your mom's parents or your dad's parents?
My mom's parents, yeah.
Got it. So how would you characterize your relationship with your maternal grandfather? This is the one that raised you from 2 months to 14 years.
Fantastic. He taught me all about family values and work ethics. He always allowed me to go with him on the fishing boats and later to his fishing company that, cutting up fish and all kinds of stuff. I started to work at this company when I was like 8 or 9.
Oh, wow.
And more or less been working since then. When I'm not playing or going to school in Ólafsvík, I was working all hands on deck when there was a lot of fish.
Out of curiosity, what type of fish were you guys fishing for?
Cod, mainly.
Cod.
Yeah.
And was that a commercial fishing boat then? You owned a fishing business?
We had a small, like a 3-guy small boat with hand fishing gear. And then he bought other fish from other sailors, other fishermen. And then he worked the fish, mostly salted fish for Spain and Africa. All the heads went to Nigeria, and all the cod fillets went to Spain.
Very interesting. Well, thanks for sharing. So from an educational standpoint, I know that you started out in culinary school for a couple of years, and I'm wondering, what were you thinking? What was your ambition at that point in time?
I always loved cooking and growing up, helping my grandma in the kitchen and all that. And I was taking culinary school to go to get my diploma in food specialist, examining food. And then I gave up on that. I met my wife, so we were busy.
Okay. So you transitioned from focus on pursuing a degree and work in culinary to being an electrician. And I'm wondering, how did that transition come about?
I have always been fond of the electricity field. Getting shocked early age you know, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm extremely curious, so I have to know how things work. You know, taking apart the radio and putting it back together, and wondering why it works when I have like half of it on the table when I assemble it again. And then I just started the school for 1 year and was offered a job in the field. So,
okay. And from what I remember, you've been an electrician for about 20 years now, maybe a little bit more than 20 years.
yeah.
What company do you currently work for, and what is your role there?
I'm an electrician at a company called Elmax, and I'm a foreman. There's the owner, and then me, and then we have like 10 guys. And it's a high-end electricity in high-end apartments and buildings.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing. And I'm sort of curious to know, how did you and Maria meet?
Yeah, when I moved to Reykjavik, I got to know my step siblings. And it's simple. Maria is my stepsister's best friend. And we met early on when I moved. And we always liked each other and didn't have the nerves to, you know, go on a date or something. And it wasn't until my sister got bored of me talking to my sister or Maria talking to my sister about the other that she called us and invited us to a movie. And then she didn't show up, so it was just me and Maria. And we've been together ever since. So
I love that story. Thank you for sharing. Not quite a blind date, but pretty close to it because you already knew each other, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's switch gears and talk about special needs. First on a personal level and then beyond. And I'm sort of curious to know, before Ingi's diagnosis, did you or Maria have any connection to the special needs community?
Not at all. We didn't know anybody. We are both from west of Iceland in small villages. Yeah, we did not know almost nobody with special needs.
Okay. And I'm sort of curious to know, at what point in time after Ingi was born did you realize that there were some differences?
It was about 1 year old. Then we noticed that he was not doing things that his older sister was capable of at the same age. Soon after that, we got him examined, and there was this lack of hyptonia and joints, and then it grew into not speaking, having loose joints, always falling, and that was the beginning of his journey. So, and we didn't get any diagnosis or something. It was just small of that or small of this. So it was just, how do I call it? Just small problems here and there.
My recollection was the diagnosis didn't take place until he was 10 or 11 years old, the actual diagnosis, once the DNA testing was available. So I'm sort of curious to know, over the first 10 years or so of his life, as more testing was done and he was having challenges, with his joints, did he ever begin to talk, or is he still nonverbal?
He started to talk. It was about 5 or 6 that other people understood him, but we understood him, and the daycare understood him, but nobody else. So, yeah, I think it was about 6 when he got better at talking, but still like a 3-year-old or 4-year-old, and he had to go to massive speech therapy every week for about 5 years.
Okay.
And I took him to speech therapy, massage, and fine movement therapy, occupational therapy. Mm-hmm. That was all days of the week, from 8 to 10 every morning.
So my recollection was Maria is a special ed teacher. So she probably has some experience working with other individuals that have differences. Is that the case?
Yeah, she's been working with special kids for about 5 years now.
Okay.
First in kindergarten, now in regular school, and so she is working a great job there, and uses her knowledge and can give very good advices and such. So she is doing a great job.
That's fabulous. So I'm sort of wondering, what are some of the fears that you and Maria have had after you got the diagnosis and during those early years while you did not have a formal diagnosis?
It was very hard for the first 11 years of Ingi's life that we had no diagnosis. We had no knowledge of what was going on. Nobody knew. And we get have answers from this doctor and have answers from that doctor. So we were very worried, but we were more worried than what the future would hold for him. Would he talk? Would his autism be a bigger problem? And all those kind of things. And then after diagnosis and getting the diagnosis, that because then we looked at all the symptoms following the problems, following the deletion. There was a lot of problems that we didn't know of, like heart condition and kidney problems and bone structures problems. So that was another chapter, worrying about the heart, and the doctors needed to operate on his joints several times, and taking decisions about that was very hard because we didn't know if it was gonna do something better for him, because nobody knows this deletion here in Iceland. So because he is the only one in Iceland with this deletion. So yeah, that was very worrying time, getting to know all those problems that has been going on for 10 years and nobody knew about. Nobody had the time or thought about examining him to full extent, and that bothered us quite a bit.
Yeah, it sounds like it's been quite a journey. I'm wondering now, with the advent of the internet and Facebook groups and things like that, if you've been able to connect with other parents who have a child with a similar diagnosis.
Yeah, we found a group a few months after the diagnosis, and it's been a great help because there's only about 300 people with this syndrome, and getting to know people with the same problems, being able to talk to somebody who knows what to expect, what to look for, and also seeing the similarities in the kids, because they all look quite the same. So yeah, that was fantastic. And when we went to the States 2018, we met a few families, and that was a fantastic trip. Mm-hmm. And seeing it was, the kids were meeting at the first time, but it seemed like they knew each other forever.
That is remarkable. Yeah,
just to be able to see in other people the same as you. So it was fantastic.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing. I'm wondering, what's the name of the group?
2Q37 Deletion.
And is it a Facebook group or what is it?
Yeah, it's a closed Facebook. There are two, one closed and one open. Yeah, 2Q37 Deletion.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make a note of that, put it in the show notes so that anybody else who might be listening will know about that resource as well. I'm wondering, was there some meaningful advice that you and Maria got early on that helped you navigate this challenging situation?
No, not really. We didn't, like I said earlier, that we didn't know any special need, either kids or grown-ups. And nobody in my family or Maria's family knew of special needs. And because Ingi's deletion wasn't found out until it was 11, we had to build our own path and make decisions and navigate through the system by ourselves. Like in Iceland, you have to have a name to a thing to get everything. And because this was individual with small of this and small of that, he didn't really fit in with the system. So we more or less had to do everything by ourselves. And it's a both good and a bad thing. So we look at it like a good thing because we didn't get the shock of having a disabled kid.
Right.
We were just working on problems until he was like 11. And so the diagnosis didn't affect us as much. We always knew that he had problems, but we were so involved in his problems and finding ways and going through the school system and getting everything that he needed. We didn't have time to, think about things. We just had to do it, and we had to find a way together to do this together. Does it make sense?
Yeah, well, I admire you for your perseverance. It sounds like it was quite a challenge because without a diagnosis, without a label, you weren't able to access the different services that you might have been able to with the diagnosis. And I don't want to focus on the negative, but just to be authentic, what were some of the other challenges that you and Maria, Ingi, faced for that matter?
It was more or less getting him, for example, into special ed school. We had a 2-year open battle. We had to sue the Ministry of Schools and also the Ministry in Reykjavik to get him to school, get him the special ed school access. And they fought us with all their power, constantly. And it took about 2 years of battling very, very hard on national news, in the papers, writing journal segments and getting people to understand why we were battling it out. And we got huge support from the community of the special ed community and also from our community with the kids, the community where Ingi grew up with normal kids, so to say. And so that drove us even harder. And finally we got conclusion that the government was breaking on us, not allowing him to the school. So that was a very hard time because, for example, my oldest daughter, even though we tried to involve her in everything and talk to her at that time, she didn't want to bother us. We were busy on doing something else, and she just stopped talking about her problems, and that resulted in problems later on. So. Yeah, it was very hard.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it. And I admire your perseverance to advocate for Ingi's rights, his educational rights. But like you had said, the disadvantage is you were putting so much time and energy into what was right for him, that you probably missed out on some situations that you needed to attend to with your other children.
Yeah.
Which is not uncommon, with a family with special needs. And I'm wondering what impact Ingi's situation has had on his siblings. You had made reference to one, that your older daughter, Mary Asta, had stopped communicating about what some of her concerns were. I'm wondering if there's been any other impact on both your daughters.
When they were younger, they had more problem regarding their friends, because Ingi is very open and wants to love everybody. So he was always, involving himself with the friends and everything. So, but later, as they grow, they are thankful for Ingi, because they both talk about that Ingi makes them better persons, makes them realize that things are different, and they have to be patient. They have to, read people better. And my oldest talks about that she found her way in going to nurse school and is doing a fantastic job there, and is going to continue to be a midwife. And she talks about that her role as Ingi's older sister gives her more privilege, more edge in her work as a nurse, that she is able to attend people differently than the other girls.
Well, no doubt she's learned a little bit about growing up with somebody who has differences. And like you said, part of it is developing the patience, right? Not getting frustrated as easily. And then, trying to figure out how to communicate, right? Because that oftentimes is one of the challenges, is the communications barrier. So I'm glad to hear that there's some silver linings, right? Some, positive things that have come out of all this.
Yeah.
Because, it's a struggle, right? No doubt you, Maria, and the rest of your family have all had to make some sacrifices. And, hopefully you can look back, say, we made a lot of the right decisions. We did the best job we could with the information that we had at the time. And, things are going to work out okay. It's not as overwhelming, hopefully today, as it was, 10 years ago.
We always, when we started this journey 20 years ago, we decided to take it as a positive thing. Of course, it's difficult to bring up a disabled kid, but we have always kept on going with the positivity and his options, good options. So, yeah.
Have there been any organizations that Ingi has benefited from, or your family has benefited from the time he was young and up until more recently?
We've been using Einstokborn, Unique Children of Iceland, and we started there when he got the diagnosis at 11. So we've been using that hugely, both connecting to other people, other parents, and also getting to know things about rights and guidance into the system, but especially connecting with other parents that have unique children. So that's been most helpful in our life.
So I'm curious to know a little bit more about the organization, because I know that you've been serving on the board for the last 4 years. How many families does Einstokborn actually serve on an annual basis?
There's about 500 families, and it's managed by parents. It doesn't get government money, so we raise every money by ourselves. We have one employee, and we have few activities all over the year, and try to do fun things together and talk about our kids.
So would that include kids with Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, autism, rare deletions, everything, or is it certain types of conditions?
Yeah, it's conditions that if it's less than 1 per 10,000 people in the world, and the other is, for example, Downs, they have their organizations. Autism have their organizations. So this is more or less for kids with no organizations around them.
I was going to say it's mostly for individuals with rare disease. That's what I would describe it as.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. So I know that you're interested in helping other dads, right? That's one of the things we talked about after you attended the conference. And I'm sort of curious to know what motivates you to do that.
Because this journey has taken me both high and low in everything. And fortunately, when I'm low, my wife is high, and then the other way around. So we have always been able to bring the other one up. But few times I've taken a longer dive than my wife. And this winter I crashed just completely. And I think I was on my lowest point when I saw the ad for the conference. And I said, oh, why not? What the heck? I don't have anything to do, so let's just look at this. And I saw the power of dads, because dads don't talk too much about their difficulties, especially in this field. And seeing at this conference groups of dads sitting together, talking about their kids or the sports or just anything, just know that you're on the same boat. And there's never been a dad-to-dad thing in Iceland. So it helped me a lot realizing that dads can help other dads. And at the conference, I more or less got the strength to admit to myself that I need help. And I got the help, and I'm doing stuff in therapy and all to get myself back up. But knowing that just the power in dad-to-dad talking. So I decided to talk to my colleagues on the board regarding to make this happen here. And we're going to try it, and the first one, it will be in early September. We haven't decided the time. And we've been talking to people, both psychiatrists, doctors and such, to come maybe once every other month to get us started and have a talk about their field. And then every other month beside that will be just guys hanging out, talking about whatever they want, getting advice. Because me and Maria have been through so much and openly talk about our problems. Through the time, other parents have always contacted us for advice. So I know that I have a lot to give, and I've given a lot of myself to other people. Mm-hmm. So I know how meaningful that is.
Yeah, well, I admire you for taking the initiative to do something that would benefit other dads. And most of the dads in the Special Fathers Network, our dad-to-dad program, there are about 500, have said, I wish there was something like this when I was a younger dad.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to start it, right? Somebody's got to do something like we did a few years ago. And I'm happy to support whatever efforts that you have and provide you with information and ideas to help you be more successful so that it's a more meaningful experience for as many dads as possible. So thank you for taking the time and having a vision. I'm thinking about advice now, and I'm wondering if there's any thoughts that you'd like to share with a dad who might be listening. And again, the dads who might be listening to this podcast are not just the dads here in the U.S., but let's hope that you can get a bunch of dads there in Iceland to listen to this podcast as well. So I'm wondering, what advice would you offer dads overall, and then maybe specifically there in Iceland?
Talk. Most importantly, talk to somebody. Doesn't have to be your wife, doesn't have to be your best friend. Just find somebody to talk to. Also, especially if you are in relationship, you have a wife or a girlfriend, and you are struggling through all the difficulties regarding your kid, find somebody to babysit for a night, for a weekend, or just 2 hours, and do something together. You have to, like when you fly, you have to put your oxygen on yourself first to help your kids or those in need. So your head has to be in the right mindset. So in order to help your kid the most, the parents have to be able to disconnect from it and take care of themselves. That's the foundation of helping your kid at the best, I think. We've been fortunate enough to have people around us that can take care of him. And now he is in 1 week a month in a home with other disabled kids. So we use that time both with the girls and with ourselves. So we take a long weekend or out to the countryside or to, UK or go on a trip together. And so, yeah, talk and take care of yourselves. That has helped me the most.
I heard you say three things. One is to communicate, talk with people, right? Open up, because most men are not very open. They're closed. The joke, at least here in the United States, is that we're the gender that won't pull over and ask for directions when we're lost. Thank God for GPS, right? That's probably saved a lot of relationships. And then the second thing I heard you say is that it's important to find time that you could work on your relationship, right? Get respite, right? Even if it's for just an hour or 2 hours at a time or overnight, but you need to be very intentional about making time for one another and finding somebody, whether it's a family member, friends, or people that you have to hire to provide you with that personal time so that you can decompress, as what I think from the day-to-day challenge. And then the third thing I heard you say is that it's important to stay healthy, right? The analogy about putting your oxygen mask on first before you can help somebody else. You have to stay strong physically. You have to stay strong mentally. If you're going to be able to be the best husband, be the best father, be the best person you can be, it's hard to do that if you're not physically and mentally strong.
Yeah.
So we're thrilled to have you as part of the Special Fathers Network. And I'm really excited about trying to help you get a group of Icelandic dads together and see if we can build on that idea that you have. And I'm wondering if there's anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up.
I just want to thank you guys. Thank you for the conference and thank you for accepting me into this and thank you for helping me regarding this and taking me open arms when I asked you if you could help, because I think it's very much needed that we start this group here in Iceland, because Iceland is a harsh country, long winters with no daylight and then full summers with no nighttime. So we are very closed, very, very closed people, men mostly. So I think I'm just so thankful for knowing that this was something that I could take up and run with it. So, yeah.
Fabulous. So if somebody wants to learn more about Einstokborn or to contact you, how would they do that?
My email is agust.kristmanns@gmail.com. And then there's a web page for Einstokborn called just Einstokborn.is. I can send you the webpage, and that is in English also, so you can see.
I'll be sure to include both those in the show notes so it'll make it as easy as possible for somebody to follow up with you. Agust, thank you for taking the time and many insights. As a reminder, Agust is just one of the dads who's part of the Special Fathers Network, a mentoring program for fathers raising a child with special needs. If you'd like to be a mentor father or are seeking advice from a mentor father with a similar situation to your own, please go to 21stCenturyDads.org. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. As you probably know, the 21st Century Dads Foundation is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, which means we need your help to keep our content free to all concerned. Would you please consider making a tax-deductible contribution? I would really appreciate your support. Agust, thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for listening to the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children match up with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for dads to support other dads.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we would be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad. Also, please be sure to register for the Special Fathers Network bi-weekly Zoom calls held on the first and third Tuesdays of every month. Lastly, we're always looking to share interesting stories. If you'd like to share your story or know of a compelling story, please send an email to david@21stCenturyDads.org.
To find out more about the Special Fathers Network, go to 21stCenturyDads.org. This program was produced by me, Tom Couch. Thanks for listening to the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast.